Hey Cake Chums and Mini Chums, and welcome back to the Mr. Baker's Cakes kitchen and another episode of Mr. Baker's Cake School. Can you believe we are 9 weeks into Mr. Baker's Cake School now? That's right, it's episode 9. Now, of course, some of us will be going back to school as of Monday next week, but I know that there's a lot of you who will be continuing to do your learning at home, so don't worry, Mr. Baker's Cake School isn't going anywhere anytime soon. That being said, I have had quite a few requests recently from people asking if we can diversify our offerings a little bit. Basically, I think people want a bit of a break from the sugar. And so as a result, this week we're going to be attempting our first savoury recipe. Now, of course, there is an inexhaustive list of savoury recipes we could have turned our attention to for our first ever savoury baking adventure. But I wanted to choose something that I thought most people would enjoy making and also eating. And so in this week's episode of Mr. Baker's Cake School, we're going to be making pizza from scratch. Let's get to the video. Now, I'm sure that most of you already know that pizza originates from Italy, and one of the things I love the most about it is that you can customize it to your own preferences. So whether you fall on the side of pineapple does belong on a pizza or pineapple doesn't, whether you like to keep things nice and simple with just cheese and tomato, or whether you like to load yours up with lots of different toppings. In this week's episode of Mr. Baker's Cake School, I'm going to show you how to make your own pizza dough from scratch and then how to turn that into your very own custom pizza. But anyway, that's enough chat. It's time to wash our hands, pop our aprons on, and let's get baking. Now I'm going to start by going through all the ingredients that you will need to make your pizza dough, and then once we've done that and it's proving, then I'll take you through the ingredients that you'll need to make your pizza sauce. So for your pizza dough, you will need 500 grams of strong white bread flour. So this isn't one of the normal flours that we've used before where we've had either plain flour or self-raising flour. This flour has more gluten in it, which means it's able to stretch more and give us that really nice bready consistency that we're after. Now, of course, it will look different depending on where you get it from, but on the bag you want it to say strong white bread flour, okay? So 500 grams of that. You will need a small pinch of sugar. Now, I just use bog standard caster sugar because that's what I always have in the house. And that's just going to give a little bit of extra energy to the yeast to help it do its thing. And on that note, you will need 7 grams of fast action dried yeast, which comes in a powder, which looks like this, if you can see that. You will need 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 300 milliliters of warm water. Now, the way I get my warm water to the right temperature quickly is I will use 200 milliliters of room temperature bottled water, and then I'll top that up with 100 milliliters of water out of the kettle that's just been boiled. Make sure your adult has checked the temperature of the water for you, because if you make it too hot, you could burn yourself. It's kind of like the 3 bears. You don't want it to be too hot, you don't want it to be too cold, you want it to be just right. And that's pretty much all that you will need to make your pizza dough. Now, of course, we are 9 episodes into Mr. Baker's Cake School now, so lots of the techniques that we'll be using today will be things that you have seen before. We're going to be making our dough in our big bowl that we've used many, many times, and to start with, we're going to pour in our strong white bread flour. Now, you'll notice I'm not sieving mine. I don't really sieve flour when I'm making bread, but if you prefer to sieve yours, of course you can. Into the flour, I'm going to add in my pinch of sugar and my dried yeast. I'm just going to give that a quick mix around with my fingers, and then we're going to make a well in the centre, which we've done a few times now. So that's digging a little hole, so pushing all of the dry ingredients to the side and leaving a space in the middle. Into that space, we're going to pour in our warm water and our olive oil. Now, you'll notice that the olive oil and the water don't really mix together. The oil floats on the top. I wonder if you can find out why that is and let me know down in the comments below. Once you've got to this stage, I want you to take a wooden spoon and then just start to mix all those ingredients together in the bowl. You want them to come together into a big sticky dough. Once it's become quite combined, I like to then put the spoon to the side and I'll get in there with my hands. And I'm literally just squeezing all of that mixture together to try and combine it into one big ball. All of those loose bits of flour and loose bits of dough and combining them all in together. Once you've done that, you should be left with a reasonably sticky dough that will hold its shape when you pick it up. Once you get to this stage, what I'd like you to do is take a bit more of your strong white bread flour and use it to dust your work surface lightly. Don't use too much because the more flour we put on the worktop, the more it will go into our dough and it could change the consistency. The next thing we need to do, now we've got our dough to this stage, is to knead it. Now if you watched my hot cross buns video, then you'll know what kneading is, but I'm going to go through it for you again just in case you haven't seen that one. To knead your dough, what you want to do is hold it lightly at one end and then push it away from you. Once you've done that, you then fold it back on itself and do it again. What we're doing when we're kneading dough is we're starting to stretch it out and encouraging that gluten to develop. We want this dough to be really nice and stretchy. Now when I'm pushing it out and folding it back, I'm also going to be rotating that dough slightly. Otherwise I might end up working the same bit over and over again. Now kneading your dough actually takes quite a while, so you're going to want to do this for about 10 minutes. If you find you're getting a bit tired, you might want to ask your adult to help you.
A few moments later.
Okay, so after about 10 minutes, on a hot day like today, first of all, you should feel very warm. You've clearly had a bit of a workout, and actually kneading dough is a really good exercise. You should also find that your dough feels a lot less sticky and a lot more elastic, which means it stretches a lot more. There's another test that you can do to see if your dough is ready, and that's something called the window pane test. Now the way the window pane test works is you take a small amount of your dough and then you gradually stretch it out until you can see light through the middle. Let's see if I can do this. Now I doubt you'll be able to see this because the light is actually behind the camera, but basically I can stretch this dough right out until it's almost see-through. When you get to the point that you feel like your dough is nice and well kneaded, and perhaps you've been able to do that window pane test, and it's looking nice and smooth and not very sticky anymore, what I'd like you to do is grab another large clean bowl and a little bit more of your olive oil. I'm just going to pour about a tablespoon into the bottom of the bowl, and then I'm just going to spread that around the entire bowl. Now the job of this oil is to stop the dough sticking while we leave it in here to prove. So as I say, we want to coat as much of the bowl as we can with that oil. When you've done that, we're going to take our dough, place it in the bottom of the bowl, and then we're going to cover the top of the bowl with some cling film. That will stop the air getting to your dough and drying it and allowing it to form a skin on the top, because we don't want that to happen. Now we want to leave our dough to prove, and what proving is when the yeast inside the dough starts to have a chemical reaction and develop air which will push the dough up, kind of like the raising agents that we have in self-raising flour. Now this should take usually about an hour on a warm day like today, but it might take a little bit longer. You can help it along by putting it in a warm place, such as an airing cupboard, or if your oven has a proving setting. As I say, it's a really warm day today in the Mr. Baker's Cakes kitchen, so I'm just going to leave mine on the worktop to the side while I get on with making my pizza sauce. Before I do that though, you know what I'm going to say. It's time to have a bit of a tidy up so that we're nice and ready for part 2 of how to make your own pizza. Okay, so while our dough is proving, I'm going to take you through the ingredients you'll need to make your pizza sauce. You will need 1 clove of fresh garlic, between 350 and 400 grams of chunky passata, which is like crushed tomatoes. If you don't have chunky passata, you can also use a tin of chopped tomatoes, it's up to you. The reason why I say between 350 and 400 grams is sometimes jars, bottles and cartons can come in different sizes. So anything kind of between 350 and 400 grams is perfect. You will need 1 tablespoon of tomato puree, a teaspoon of dried oregano, a decent sized bunch of fresh basil, some sugar and some red wine vinegar. If you don't have red wine vinegar, you can substitute in normal vinegar, or lemon juice would be another good alternative. Now the type of pizza sauce we're going to be making today is a cold sauce, in that we're not going to heat it in a saucepan on the hob at all. Instead, we're going to combine all of the ingredients cold and just let them sit for a while and develop their flavours that way. So to start with, we're going to take our garlic, and you just need to get 1 good sized clove. Now we're going to start by peeling our garlic, and to do that I like to chop off each end, and then you usually find that that will allow you to peel off most of that skin. Now garlic is a very strong flavour, so my top tip after you've worked with it is to wash your hands straight away, and I recommend doing it in cold water, because if you wash your hands in hot water after using garlic, it can actually cook the smell into your skin, which is really quite strange. Now once you've got all that skin off your clove of garlic, you should just be left with something that looks like this. We need to break this up into small pieces, so you have a few options here. You can either use a tool called a garlic press, and the way that works is you put the garlic inside and then you squeeze this bit down and it pushes the garlic out through the little holes. You can also use a very small grater like this one. If you have a box grater at home, you might see that you've got this sort of size grating holes on one of the sides. Or if you don't have a garlic press or a small grater, you can just chop it up really small using a knife, although I'd recommend getting an adult to help you. When you're using a grater, do be careful because they are very sharp, and speaking from experience, you can grate your skin if you're not careful. I've just grated that garlic into a nice clean bowl, and then as I recommended, I'm going to go and wash my hands so that I don't end up smelling of garlic for the next couple of days. Next up into the bowl, I'm going to add in my chunky passata. My tablespoon tomato puree, my teaspoon of dried oregano, or oregano for American viewers, a small pinch of sugar, a teaspoon of red wine vinegar, and then finally some fresh basil. Now to prepare my basil, I'm going to take a good sized amount and I'm going to pull off all the leaves, taking as little stem as I can. Now you'll find that the smaller leaves towards the top of the plant have more flavour, so do make sure that you get as many of those as you can. Basil with tomato and mozzarella cheese is absolutely one of my favourite flavour combinations. And then when you've got all your leaves together like this, a really clever way to cut them up to go into your dish is to put them into a little pile, as many as you can, and then roll them up. This has a proper name which I can't for the life of me remember at the moment, but you can then use your knife, and remember we've talked about this before, always keep your fingernails pointing towards where the knife is going to be, and that will stop you cutting yourself. If you're not confident using a knife, or if your adult would prefer you not to use a knife, you can either get an adult to do this bit for you, or alternatively, another way you can prepare your basil is literally just to rip it up using your fingers. Okay, and then again I'm going to add that basil into the bowl with all the other ingredients. Next we're going to give that a jolly good stir, just to make sure all those ingredients are completely combined together. It already smells so delicious. And I'm just going to leave that sat to one side while I carry on preparing the rest of my topping ingredients. I'm going to be doing a fairly simple pizza today. It's called a margherita, and that's basically just my tomato sauce, fresh basil, and mozzarella cheese. Now mozzarella cheese usually comes in a big ball like this. To prepare it for my pizza, all I'm going to do is cut it into thin slices. They can stay nice and big, and I'll show you how we put them onto our pizza afterwards. So I'm trying to cut them quite thinly, probably about half a centimetre each. Of course, you can add whatever toppings to your pizza that you would like. Why not try adding some different types of cooked meats? Vegetables like peppers, sweet corn, onion, anything you fancy really. The only thing you need to remember is not to overload your pizza, because what can happen is all the moisture in those toppings can leak out into your pizza crust and make it soggy, and we don't want that. Okay, so now all my toppings are ready, I'm going to carry on working on my pizza dough. Now, mine has actually been proving for about an hour and a half now, and on a warm day like today, it's clearly been very active. Look at this. I think you'll agree that's definitely doubled in size and then some. What we're going to do first of all is knock back the dough, and you might recall we did this when we made hot cross buns. That basically means I punch into the middle and it lets out all of that excess air. You can see already it's gone from being right at the top of the bowl to about halfway up. Next, I'm going to sprinkle my worktop again with a bit more of that strong white bread flour. And then I'm going to turn the dough out onto the work surface, just guiding it out slightly by hand. Now, by the way, this is a really good opportunity to preheat your oven to 220 degrees if you have a normal oven, or 200 degrees if you have a fan oven. You can also use this time to prepare your baking trays. Now, quite often when we're making pizza at home, we have what's called a pizza stone, which is a big piece of ceramic that allows you to cook your pizza and really crisp it up on the bottom because it gets very hot. But lots of people don't have those, so today I'm just going to use a normal, old and gross looking baking sheet. I'm going to pop on a little bit more of our olive oil and then use a brush to just brush it around and make sure the whole sheet is covered. That would just help the dough not to stick. Now, I'm going to prepare 2 baking sheets today, but you've probably got enough dough here to make 3 or even 4 pizzas. Now those are prepared, it's time for me to chop my dough. You've got enough dough here to make about 4 individual sized pizzas or 2 large ones, so it's really up to you what you decide you want to do. On your lightly floured surface, remember we're just going to roll backwards and forwards, trying to help our dough keep that circle shape. So we know the important thing is to keep it moving and not just roll it in one direction. And then once you've got it to a size and a shape that you're kind of happy with, mine's a bit more of a square than a circle, we're going to transfer it onto one of our oiled baking sheets. Now I've put 2/4 of my dough onto baking sheets now, and that's left me with 2/4 left over. Now you could carry on making up your pizzas and decorate them and cook them all in one go. Or what you can do is once you've cooked these, roll these out, cover them with your sauce and then freeze them to enjoy later. When you want to eat them, you can just take them out the freezer, pop your toppings on and cook it from frozen. It just means that you need to give it a few extra minutes in the oven. But for today, I'm just going to work with these 2 here. Now to start with, we're going to put some of the tomato sauce that we made earlier onto our pizzas. We're going to give it a quick stir just to make sure all those ingredients are still mixed together. And then I'm just going to put a couple of spoonfuls into the middle of my pizza. Now, it's really important that when you spread this out, you use the back of a spoon. Because we've rolled this dough out so thinly, if you spread this around with a knife, you could make holes in the base, which could allow the sauce to leak through. So instead, I'm just going to spread using the back of the spoon, leaving about 1 inch around the outside of the pizza so that I can pick it up, and then it will have a little crust. Then I'm going to do exactly the same on the other one. Again, working up to about 1 inch from the side, adding more if I need to. And now for the fun bit, time for your toppings. I'm just using the mozzarella cheese. So what I'm going to do is put some of the big bits right in the middle, and then I'm going to break some up and just pop it around the edge. And there you have it. These are now ready to go into the oven. I need to bake for around 12 to 15 minutes until this crust has puffed up slightly and got a lovely golden brown colour, and of course all the cheese has melted. So, like always, I'm going to go and pop mine in the oven.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
And as always, by the power of editing, here are my finished pizzas. Now I must confess, I might have got distracted by a phone call and left them in for a couple of minutes more than they actually needed, so mine are a little bit well done, shall we say, but I'm sure they'll still taste absolutely delicious. Now to finish my margherita pizza off, I'm going to transfer it over onto a wooden chopping board, and then I'm going to take a little bit more of my fresh basil and just plop some leaves straight onto the top of the pizza, as they are. And what this means is they'll get that really nice strong basil flavour while I'm eating it. If I'd put these on before it went into the oven, they would have just cooked away into nothing. That's why I like to leave them till the very end like this. And again, remember that those smaller leaves are the ones that have got all the flavour in. And then of course, it's time to slice it up. Now I have one of these tools here, which is called a pizza wheel. And this just means it's really easy to slice your pizza without dragging any of those toppings off. If you did this with a knife, when you slice, it will pull all that cheese, and we don't want that to happen. So by using a wheel like this, it means all those toppings stay exactly where you want them to be. And now of course comes the best bit, tasting your delicious pizza. And that is really good. Now one of the things I most love about making pizzas myself is that of course you can put whatever toppings on you want. So if you've got a bigger family, or perhaps you're looking for something fun to do with your friends once the lockdown has finished, you can make a whole load of your pizza bases, put your sauce on, and then have all the toppings laid out in little bowls, and everyone can choose which ones they want to use on their own pizza, meaning that everyone gets their absolute favourite, and you have a lot of fun making them. I do hope you enjoyed learning how to make homemade pizzas with me in the cake school this week. And if you'd like to have a go at some more savoury recipes, be sure to give this video a thumbs up down below. As I mentioned earlier, we are now 9 episodes into Mr. Baker's Cake School, so be sure to head down to the description below where you'll find links to all of the other videos so far. That way you can get all caught up on any you might have missed. And of course, to make sure that you don't miss out on any future videos, you can hit that big red subscribe button down there on the right. In fact, if you ring the bell, it will also make sure you get a notification every time I upload a new video. As always, be sure to share your pictures with me of your homemade pizza over on social media. Again, the links are in the description down below, and I look forward to seeing them all this week. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you all next week. Take care, guys.